Hey, welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. Today we're talking about something a lot of people feel but rarely say out loud: missing the person you used to be. You know, that quiet ache for your old self, before life changed you in ways you didn't expect.
Yeah. Maybe you were more confident back then, or more carefree. Maybe you laughed louder, trusted easier, dreamt bigger. And now you catch yourself wondering, where did that version of me go?
And I think there's a kind of grief in that. A real grief. But it's the kind that doesn't get spoken about, because people assume we're always supposed to be proud of who we've become. That we should be grateful for growth, no questions asked.
But growth isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's surviving something that changed you. Sometimes it's building walls you didn't want to build, learning lessons you never asked for. And in the process, you can lose little pieces of who you were. That person you used to be before the heartbreak, before the anxiety, before life got heavy.
And there's no shame in mourning that loss. Because that version of you mattered. They got you here. They carried hope in ways you maybe can't anymore. They believed in things you no longer do. Missing them doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're human.
It's like running into an old friend in a dream. You wake up with this strange mix of warmth and sadness. And for a moment, you just miss them. Even if you know you've changed. Even if you know they're not coming back in the same way.
And maybe the real kindness is allowing yourself to miss them without guilt. To look back and say, you were good to me. You mattered. Without making it mean that who you are now isn't enough.
Exactly. Because the person you are today might carry more scars, but they also carry more depth. More resilience. And maybe even more compassion. The cost of that growth was high, but it doesn't mean the old version of you wasn't valuable. They were just at a different chapter.
And sometimes, when things feel especially heavy, it's not because you're doing something wrong, it's because you're quietly carrying the weight of everything you've been through. Everything you had to let go of, and everything you're still learning to live without.
Yeah. You're not just navigating the present, you're carrying echoes of your past self too. The one who once dreamed of a different life, or trusted someone who hurt them, or had no idea what was coming. And it's okay to pause for that. It's okay to say, I miss her, or I miss who I used to be, without needing to fix it.
There's strength in honoring your past self without rushing to rewrite the story. You don't need to force a silver lining onto everything. Some chapters just leave a bruise, and some versions of you were simply meant for a time that no longer fits.
I think we often mistake growth for constant progress. But some of the most meaningful growth looks like sitting with your own history and saying, that version of me was real. And I loved her, even if I didn't know how to say it at the time.
Or, he was trying his best. He was hopeful in a way I'm not anymore. But I'm still grateful for him. That kind of self-compassion? That's healing.
It is. And I think we need more of that, more space to say, I've changed, and that's okay, while also allowing ourselves to feel the sting of what's been left behind. Because we don't grieve people only when they die. Sometimes, we grieve the parts of ourselves that had to go so we could survive.
Yeah. And I think one of the hardest parts is that nobody really tells you how quiet that grief can be. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it just shows up when you're scrolling through old photos, or hearing a song you used to love. It hits you in the stillness.
Or when someone asks how you're doing and you pause, because part of you wants to say, I'm fine, and another part wants to say, I'm still trying to make peace with who I used to be. But you just smile and say, I'm all right.
Exactly. And we convince ourselves that moving on means forgetting. But it doesn't. Moving on just means learning how to carry your memories differently. Not like a burden, but like something sacred.
Something you place gently on a shelf inside your heart. You don't stare at it all day, but you also don't pretend it never existed. That's what respect looks like. That's what healing really is.
And no one else needs to understand that journey, do they? You don't have to explain why something small still makes you cry, or why you sometimes retreat when everyone else is celebrating. That's your personal timeline. It's yours.
Right? We're not clocks. We're not schedules. We're humans with stories, and some of our pages are hard to turn. But when we do it with grace. Maybe quietly, maybe slowly, but still bravely.
And you know, sometimes I think we need to hear that it's okay not to be who we were aiming for. That it's okay if the version of ourselves we thought we'd be by now doesn't exist anymore. Maybe they weren't meant to.
Absolutely. There's this idea that our old dreams or personalities are a failure if we've outgrown them. But actually, it's just evolution. You didn't mess up, you just discovered more of who you really are. And that deserves to be honored.
And part of honoring it means giving space to the grief. Letting yourself say, I used to want that, or I used to be like that, without shame. Without rushing to replace it with something shinier.
Yes. Because letting go isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about being still long enough to acknowledge what you've lost. Even if it's a past version of you. Even if no one else notices the shift.
Sometimes the biggest heartbreaks aren't from other people, they are from the realization that you're not the same. And that's tough. But it's also part of being alive. We don't stay static. We bend and we break and we rebuild. That's the beauty and the ache of it.
And in that rebuilding, you slowly start to see that maybe you don't need to become the person you once idolized. Maybe the version of you that's simply surviving and being honest, that version is already enough.
Yeah, and sometimes the softest version of you, the one that no longer needs to prove anything, is actually the strongest. It's not loud. It's not chasing approval. It's just real. Grounded. Honest.
And that version doesn't need to go back to who you used to be. You don't have to fit into old clothes, old mindsets, or old circles that no longer hold space for you. Growth can mean leaving the room entirely.
It's wild, though. Because sometimes you mourn people or places, and then you realize, you're also mourning the way you used to feel when you were around them. And that's such a layered kind of grief.
Yeah, like when a friendship fades and it's not even about them anymore. It's about who you were when you were close. The safety, the inside jokes, the version of yourself that only existed in that moment, with that person.
And you're left wondering if that version of you is still in there somewhere. But I think we carry all those pieces. We don't lose them, we just integrate them differently. They become part of the story, not the whole story.
That's beautifully said. We don't need to force ourselves to be one permanent version of who we are. We're allowed to shift. To feel joy and sadness at once. To miss the past without wanting to go back to it.
So if you're listening to this and feeling like you're not who you used to be, like you've drifted from a version of yourself you once held close, just know this, that's not failure. That's not weakness. That's growth.
And even if it hurts, even if it feels like you've lost something precious, you've also made space for something new. A softer kind of strength. A quieter kind of knowing.
You don't have to rush to be whole again. You're allowed to carry pieces. You're allowed to grieve the past while still building your future.
Thanks for spending time with us on this episode. Take care of your heart, and give yourself permission to keep becoming.
We'll see you next time on the British Accent Podcast. Until then, be gentle with yourself.